Hey everyone. So, how did we do in predicting the major news events for April 2017 in Farsight's Time Cross project? Well, in my view, great. Now here's what happened. Again, the basics of the project. Remote viewers working at the Farsight Institute in our ongoing and monthly Time Cross project predicted in significant detail the major news events for April 2017 using remote viewing, all done and published on YouTube for all to see in March 2017, the previous month. Now, on the last day of every month, we publish these remote viewing predictions for the coming month. And this experiment is working very well, folks, so keep watching. And remember, to keep track of the major news events for each month, we publish a news analysis table on our website. Also, do know that there is a fully developed scientific theory as to why remote viewing can be used to perceive and thus to predict the future, and we have lots of materials and publications relating to that on our website as well. By watching this project, you are watching how science will be taught in the future, after the outdated and incomplete theories and paradigms of today are eventually replaced or fixed. In terms of our monthly editions of Time Cross, someone can say that one month's results may be accidental or coincidental, but month after month after month, to get the news right, a month in advance, when the events change dramatically from month to month, that should eventually wake this planet up. Well, we had 3 remote viewers working for April's edition of the Time Cross project: Dick Allgaier, Princess Janae, and Melina Hall. Aziz Brown was traveling that month. So, starting with Dick Allgaier, and as he has done often in the past, he began by reporting a number of brief perceptions that he calls tagging. Now, these are not full remote viewing sessions, just perceptions that are essentially brief mental images relating to various events that will happen the following month. He also did one full remote viewing session, which I will discuss in a moment. Now, in Dick's first tagging exercise, he perceives an urban area experiencing an emergency. The roof of a building is blown off in one spot in a large explosion. There is a smell of burned tar in the air. The building has a flat top, and there is a spectator crowd surrounding the building. It is not a terrorist event. He makes a good sketch of the event as well. Well, as it turns out, that is exactly what happened in St. Louis when a boiler explosion blew the roof off of a building, sending materials over 500 feet away. There were 3 dead and 4 injured. Now, Dick's sketch of the event is a remarkable match to photos of the actual event. Now, for Dick's second tagging exercise, he perceives that a famous woman would pass away. She is associated with government in some way, and there is a mystery surrounding her death. Well, as it turns out, on April 12th, Judge Sheila Abdus Salam was found dead in the Hudson River. She was the first African-American woman to serve on the highest court in New York State. It was widely reported in the news, and as of this date in May, they still do not understand the full circumstances surrounding her death. Now, for Dick's third tagging exercise, he perceives a missile launch and predicts that it would make headlines in April. Well, as it turned out, missiles were the rage in the news for April. The most reported news event in all of April was the April 6th launch of 59 cruise missiles against Syria in response to the use of poison gas on April 4th, where scores died and hundreds were injured. But also, North Korea launched a ballistic missile on the 5th of April, and North Korean missile launch stories restarted in abundance around the 15th of April, and they continued throughout the month, including 2 reports of failed missile launches. The gas attack in Syria, combined with the focus on the U.S. and North Korean missiles, were clearly the 3 biggest stories of the month. Now, for Dick's fourth tagging exercise, he perceives that there would be a political shakeup in the Trump White House. And indeed, that is exactly what began on the 5th of April when Steve Bannon was removed from the National Security Council. It was clearly an important and heavily covered news event. Now, in Dick's 5th tagging exercise, that involves someone who passed another person a handgun, and that person shoots it. Well, on the 20th of April, a terrorist shot and killed a police officer in Paris, France, and the event was heavily reported in the news. Okay, finally, Dick's last tagging exercise involves the perception of a flooding event. The flooding took place in the countryside and water was dangerously rising. Well, there was a lot of flooding in April 2017 in Latin America, notably Peru, Ecuador, Colombia. There was historic flooding. This calamitous flooding started in March and it continued through April, but there was also a major storm system that blasted through the southern states of the United States that started on the 30th of April. And as of the recording of this video, this storm system is continuing in the Midwestern states and Canada in a huge manner in May. On the 30th of April, the storm system began with severe storms and breathtaking tornadoes. There were numerous dead and injured, as well as serious flooding. So, Dick's perception of a water flooding event for April was a good one. Water was in the news during April. Now, on to Dick Elgire's formal, full remote viewing session. In his formal session, Dick perceives an urban environment with lots of subjects. There is a social gathering of some sort. Now, this morphs into a death event as a metallic box-like structure, a vehicle of some kind, is hijacked or taken over. 2 men appear to be involved in the news stories for the event, both Islamic and one wore a cap. Well, as it turns out, such an event actually did happen. There was a terrorist attack in Stockholm, Sweden, as a hijacked truck rammed into people and then crashed on April 7th. 4 people were killed. This was a heavily covered news event. As for the perception of 2 people involved, it turned out that the news mistakenly initially reported that a man with a cap was involved, and then later changed the story to say that he was innocent and, in fact, a different person was responsible for the attack. So in terms of news coverage, 2 people were discussed. However, there was another news story during the month of April that had some characteristics that were similar to Dick's perceptions. And it may have been that Dick blended both of these events together in his remote viewing session. You see, in St. Petersburg, Russia, a subway train was hit by a deadly blast as a train car filled with passengers traveled between stations on the 3rd of April. The interior of the train car looked remarkably like Dick's sketch of the vehicle, so we had 2 vehicle terror events that were big news in April 2017, both involving large rectangular metallic moving structures. And again, it is possible that Dick blended some of the characteristics of both events into his session. Sometimes that happens with remote viewing, especially when the target events have many similar characteristics. Now, on to the 2 reported events by Princess Genet. In Princess's first session, she reports that an airborne machine or plane malfunctions in the air. The engine seems to cut off. There is resultant silence, and the craft falls into a large body of water, breaking in half. The craft is then surrounded by boats in the water. There are flashing lights and the sense of chaos. There is also the sense that this event is the result of a problematic leadership. Something happens relating to this event that would not have happened had leadership been better in some way. Well, the event happens in a coastal area, and there is a city in the distance. And as it turned out, North Korea was involved with 2 heavily reported missile launches in April that fit these perceptions. There was the ballistic missile that was launched on the 5th of April, which flew about 60 kilometers and then fell into the Sea of Japan, sometimes called the East Sea. And there was also a failed missile launch on the 18th of April. Now, both events took place in Sinpo. That's a port city on the eastern side of North Korea. Sinpo also has a shipyard where there is lots of submarine activity. Princess's perception of problematic leadership should be obvious here, since the volatile president of North Korea is the driving force behind all of these provocative missile launches. Now, for Princess's second remote viewing session, she reports on an event that contains lots of energetics. There is 1 or more objects that drop from altitude. She perceives this object or these objects as metallic, but she is also reminded of something really hot, like a hot rock. There is intense heat, and there is an explosion that follows a forceful impact. Buildings are destroyed, and there is death. The people in the area speak another language, and they have tan skin. The people cannot run from this huge explosion. The event is overwhelming. Well, there were two events that happened during the month of April that fit these perceptions. There was the attack of 59 cruise missiles that were launched by the United States against the air base in Syria on the 6th of April, but April was also the month where the mother of all bombs was dropped in Afghanistan against an ISIS underground bunker and tunnel network on April 13th. This is the largest non-nuclear bomb in the United States' inventory of bombs. So, in general terms, Princess describes an event in which one or more highly energetic objects hits the ground and causes major destruction. The expectation is that this event would be prominently covered in the news, and indeed this was the case. Since both events have similar characteristics, it is not clear which event is being described by Princess. Nonetheless, something of that nature was predicted to happen in April, and indeed such an event did happen. Now finally, Melina Hall had 2 remote viewing sessions for April 2017. In the first, she reports on a storm event. It is a coastal area that has some tourist activity. There is a rise in the water levels and lots of strong wind. The weather becomes dangerous and the nearby subjects are highly concerned. Melina reports that it is like a hurricane. There is some damage to the shore area, including damage to structures, a pier or bridge or deck of some sort, and the evacuation of people from the area. Well, as it turns out, there were 2 major storm events impacting New Zealand in April. Cyclone Debbie, which hit New Zealand on the 6th of April, and Cyclone Cook, which crashed into New Zealand between the 12th and 14th of April. Now, as you know, a cyclone is the same as a hurricane, and these storms had major impacts on New Zealand, with some coastal damage, strong winds, and serious flooding. Now, for Melina's second session, she depicts a serious war setting in a dry, dusty, sandy, and rocky environment. The event takes place in a warm environment during daylight. It seems obvious from the environment that she is perceiving an event that occurs in the Middle East. The subjects are male with uniforms. The topography is generally flat. It is a war zone and the subjects have weapons. There are lots of soldiers, troops from 2 opposing armies. It is a multiracial event with primary enemies and allies. An air force is involved. There are helicopter sounds, and there are both aerial and land attacks. Now, Melina reports on 2 leaders, one for each side. One of the leaders has facial hair and is cocky and somewhat foolish in some respect. His troops don't have a lot of confidence in him, and these troops seem a bit more ragtagged. The other leader, for the other side, is smart. He knows what he's doing. His troops respect him, and they seem better outfitted. Well, as it turns out, April 2017 experienced a huge increase in wartime activity in the Middle East. There were major battles in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Now, some people may wonder why we continue to include the Middle East wars in our pool of possible future targets, since the wars seem to be ongoing, and thus they seem more predictable. But that is not really the case. Often, the Middle Eastern wars hardly appear at all in the news. This was the case in March, February, and January of 2017, as well as June and July of 2016. So Melina's session is really useful, since it tells us in advance that April 2017 will have a major increase in the Middle East war activity, following a 3-month lull. This is good to know in advance of it happening. So, that is how we did for predicting the major news events for April 2017, all with remote viewing sessions conducted and published on YouTube for all to see in March 2017. Friends, this is really important. Cutting-edge science at its best. You are helping by simply watching. And in addition to our Time Cross project, we also do mysteries projects. And many of you will be pleased to hear that we are soon to release a major news mystery project. One that will knock your socks off. So stay tuned. Also, if you have not already done so, I hope you get a chance to watch our recently released mysteries project on the Roswell UFO crash. It is 3 hours of spine-tingling detail from 3 great remote viewers. And do remember to watch our other mysteries projects as well, such as the investigations into the 9/11 events, the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, the psychology of Adolf Hitler, and some amazing explorations into UFOs and extraterrestrial life. As always, all Farsight remote viewing work is done under totally blind conditions with no communication between any of the remote viewers. It is also good to remember that when you watch our mysteries projects, you are helping us at Farsight do our work, including the funding of our Time Cross project, which we offer free to the public, but which does cost us a few $1,000s to do each month. We have no other significant source of income to pay the bills, so you really help when you follow and watch our activities and research. Finally, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Farsight Press, to keep up with the latest. There is nothing like Farsight anywhere else on the internet. You can find out information about all of our present and past activities on our website. Also, on our website, you can sign up for our free email newsletter. So stay ahead of the curve. Let the mainstream fade in the dust. Be there now.